Hey, welcome. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's webinar. So excited to see some of the participants that are joining us today. So certainly a number of great friends are tuned in. So I'm excited to be here with you today. Today we're going to be looking at referee competencies and referee team duties. This is really, it's our second webinar from the development department, and it's really geared towards national referees who are looking to make that jump from being a national referee to potentially be a licensed United World Wrestling referee. But I do think some of the topics, a lot of the topics that we talk about today are just great reminders for all of us, in terms of what our responsibilities are as a referee. And so I think this is, I'm certainly excited that you're here with us today, and certainly excited to go through some of the topics. And I know that some of the individuals that I saw on the on this webinar are going to see their pictures come up as well. So because they just had such great referees and great examples of how to do the job and do the job well. To get started, there's a couple of things. First off, if you have any questions that come up throughout the course of this webinar, I'd encourage you to go down to the bottom of your screen. There is a Q&A button. And if you simply click the Q&A button, you can type in your question. And then at the end of the webinar, I'll have time and we'll go through as many questions as possible as you may have. So please feel free to do that. And then also to get started here, one of the things I like to do here early is just kind of run a poll as to, where is everybody coming, tuning in from. So, so if you could take a minute right now and just, I'll give 30 seconds here, select, where you're from, which continent. So it's always kind of a great opportunity just to see where everybody is coming from. So right now we currently have 77 on the webinar. So very, very happy about that and hope to see that number increase as we go. But again, if you could just select your content, I'll share the results here shortly. All right, I'll kind of end the poll here. So we have 53 joining right now, or at least participated in this poll. And so majority of you are coming from Europe, so outstanding. So great to have, everybody from certainly many different parts of the world. So excited to have this. Next, I want to, kind of as we get started here, get back to the presentation. One of the things we're going to first look at here are, what are our objectives for today? What are the main things that I hope that you are able to get from this webinar? Number one will be, looking at, understanding the main competencies of referees, what those responsibilities are, just in general for doing the job and what we need to focus on. And then also, we're going to look at the responsibilities of each position within the referee team. So that's going to be, a couple of the main topics that we're going to be taking a look at. So first up here, the first question here, what are the main competencies of referees? And in this picture is one of my good friends, Carlos Garcia, who's a 1S referee from Spain. And if you have an opportunity to listen to these Spanish or French version of this webinar, which the French one will be this Friday and this Spanish one will be a week from Friday, he'll be the educator presenting that webinar during that time. So he just does an excellent job. But as a referee, the referee has a big responsibility in wrestling. They're the person of authority during the match and at times during the competition. And they have to make quick decisions and enforce the rules while remaining neutral in the outcome. And certainly there are many jobs that the referee must perform during the bout and at a competition. And during this time, they have to remain professional and calm in certainly some very stressful situations. And so what are the main competencies of the referees as they go through and do this? So I'd like to, go ahead and actually run another question for everybody is, what is the main competency of a referee? Like, you had to select one, what would that one be? So if you could take an opportunity right now to, select what you think is the, I guess I wouldn't say necessarily, maybe most important referee competency, because I think all of these are great things that every referee should be able to do. But which one does everybody believe would be the most important? Again, I'll give about 45 seconds here to answer this. And again, it's anonymous. I have no idea who's responding to what in what answer. All right, quick share of the results. So here is what a majority of you had. So the two top ones here are safety of wrestlers and being fair and unbiased. And certainly we're going to talk about each of those individually. I think all of these things are important, but I think definitely these are the top two that you guys both, that everybody all listed here. So great job. The first one that comes up when I start thinking of the referee competencies, what's one of the main things that as a referee, what do we have to do? And for me, the first one here is, being fair and unbiased. I think when I look at all of the different competencies that we have, this is one that I think is such an important part. I think I can fix and I can get better at all of the others. Like I can work on improving the safety. I can work on evaluating holds. But so when I look at it from my from my perspective, this is probably one of the most important ones here. As a referee, we really can only see two wrestlers. It has to be red and blue. Those are the only two. And we really, as a referee, the main objective is to allow the wrestlers to decide the outcome of the match. And this is such an important process that no matter what we do, we may not get every call right. I can tell you as a referee, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to get every call and score every situation correctly. I'm certainly going to do my best. But I think the most important part here is that I have to make sure that no matter what happens, that I'm fair and unbiased in all situations. And I think as long as we stick to that process as a referee, I think all of the other things we can work through. So this is one of the first ones I think is extremely important in this process. The next one, which you guys also had mentioned, which is the safety of the athletes. And so this is, certainly as a referee, we have a responsibility to help protect the athletes and make sure that they, we prevent any unnecessary injuries. I think that's the key here is wrestling is a dynamic sport. And there's certainly opportunities to get injured throughout the course, just between the actions and the level of wrestling. It's certainly, injuries are going to happen. But as a referee, we want to prevent any unnecessary injuries that occur. And really that's by identifying potentially dangerous situations, whether that's, folding the leg back or, you can see kind of putting pressure on the joints, being able to be in position to see that and then being able to stop that at the correct time is such an important part. And certainly one of the two main competencies of referees. If I look at the top two, it's the first two, being fair and unbiased, and then the safety of the athletes. If we can make sure we do those two things, the matches may not go perfect, but certainly we always know we can improve in those other areas. But these are the two main things that we have to consider. The next one here is evaluation of holds. Certainly your ability to be able to score points and score points accurately is such an important part of this. And as a referee, I know some of you that are on this or, in webinar are some of the best referees in the world. And from this that this has to be done very quickly. As you're just getting started as maybe a national referee or haven't refereed before or considering it, this is, an important part, but it's just being able to evaluate actions and then score the points and then score them quickly because you don't have time to wait and think about it. You have to provide the score immediately. Now, many times there's certainly a lot of different situations that we have to consider in this process, because wrestling is so dynamic. But I think a lot of times we can classify everything into these four basic questions. you know, which and I stole this chart from you know, my good friend Carlos, because he did a similar presentation on point scoring a week ago, and I saw that he had this chart up, and it kind of is the process of these 4 questions kind of being intermixed into a chart that's easy to see. So the first question is who's the attacking wrestler? I think that's always got to be the important part, is who's taking the risk and who's making the action. So we can see in this picture that red is the attacking wrestler here in this situation. Then the next 3 questions we have to answer, and we have to answer these very quickly. First question, is it standing or parterre? Did the action start from the standing position, or were they in parterre? And primarily we have to look at where was the defensive wrestler at in this when the action started. Because it doesn't matter where the attacking wrestler is at, it's only important as to where the defensive wrestler is at. Are they standing or are they parterre when this action started? The next question is did the action go to danger or not? And when we talk about danger, danger is touching an elbow, a shoulder, or a head, and at an angle less than 90 degrees. So it's kind of a yes or no question. Are they in danger? Yes or not? No. And so we have to evaluate that. And then the last question is it grand amplitude or not? And we look at grand amplitude, we're looking at, again, the hips going over the chest during an action, you know, complete separation from the mat, and the hips of the defensive wrestler go over top of their chest during this action, kind of over top that vertical plane. And so we evaluate that. That's a yes or no question. Is it grand amplitude? Yes or no? And then based on where you're at, kind of determines what the points are. Now, this again is a general chart, and certainly wrestling is very dynamic, and this may not work for every single situation that exists, but it'll work for quite a few of them here. So for example, I like to start with the grand amplitude or not question, because if it's grand amplitude, my only choices are 5 or 4. If it goes to danger, it's 5. If it doesn't go to danger, it's 4. If there's no grand amplitude, then my choices for the action are 4 or 2. So if it goes to danger, then it would be 4. So no grand amplitude and goes to danger, this is going to be 4. If it's no grand amplitude and doesn't go to danger, it's going to be 2. And this also factors in the standing part. You know, a lot of times when we're talking about grand amplitude, we're making that assumption that they're in the standing position, because they have to be separated up off the mat for this to happen. So they would have to be in the standing position for this to occur. And the next part is the standing or parterre. If the action is in standing position and goes to danger, it's 4, no danger, 2. And then parterre, if it just goes to danger, it's 2 points. Certainly it's possible for it to be a takedown in this process. And again, this is just looking at the evaluation of holds. Takedowns are kind of a different part, but almost every other action that occurs probably falls into one of these categories with this. So just kind of some good questions to think about as you have to evaluate points, but certainly an important competency for referees. The next one here is proper referee mechanics. And here in the picture we have Mr. Jeffrey Spiegel from Germany, who's also a 1S referee. I had an opportunity to work with him at the Youth Olympic Games a couple of years ago, and just does a fantastic job. And I failed to mention, in the earlier one was Christina Ness from Norway. Again, just a great young up-and-coming referee, and an opportunity to work with her as well at the Youth Olympic Games. So both of them do an outstanding job and are going to continue to get better over time as well. But here we're looking at proper referee mechanics. And when we're talking about mechanics, we're looking at the procedures that referees follow during this time. And so some of those procedures, some of those things that they have to do include the verbal communication. It's important for referees to be able to verbalize during the match, you know, to the wrestlers. And so, you know, and what we'll be looking at in future webinars is we're going to be kind of looking at each one of these aspects and what those involve. And so I'm not going to go into a great detail about each of these now, but I'll be going in more detail, you know, in future webinars. You know, every couple of weeks we'll be doing an English webinar for referee basics, you know, kind of introduction to referee. And one of those will be on referee mechanics. And really what we're starting to look at as well is in these, for the next few competencies, this is what separates the good referees from the best referees. You know, their mechanics, how a referee's, you know, mechanisms, what they do is what starts to separate the good from the best. And so being able to verbalize during the match is one of those mechanics that referees must know. Their procedure for starting and ending matches. There's a kind of a set procedure that you follow in that process, and it's important to know that. Being able to display points properly. And I think not only displaying points, but displaying them with confidence. Holding the points up in the air and displaying them very quickly and very deliberately is such an important part of a referee, but that falls under the referee mechanics. And then it's the correct use of hand signals. In competition in venues, they may not be able to hear what you're saying, but they can always see what you're doing. So being able to use hand signals when you're communicating, when you're indicating activity time, those are all such important aspects of proper referee mechanics, which is one of the main competencies for referees. The next competencies here are appearance and mobility. And here with this is, again, another great friend of mine, Václav Šajner from the Czech Republic. And here he's raising the hand, but when we just look at it, the appearance of it, he looks the part. I think no matter what you're going to be, if you're going to be a referee at any level, you have to look the part. I know even within where I'm from, we'll have local competitions. And many times we have volunteers, people who maybe aren't referees, but they will help referee the competition, or we'll have some athletes who are wrestling who will help referee. And many times I try to at least give them, a shirt, a black shirt, a black polo shirt. They may not have the rest of it, but at least they have the black polo shirt, because it's such an important part is to look the part. So make sure always you have the things that you need to be that referee. Another part of this too is the ability to be able to move and get into proper position. I think with referees, a big part of this is referee positioning. And that's, again, another webinar that we'll look at down the road of what are some things that you can do to put yourself in the best position to evaluate points, to be able to see the clock, to be able to get confirmation. Again, lots of things that kind of go into that, but you have to be able to move and you have to be able to position yourself in that. So I think this is such an important part, of being able to look the part and then be able to move correctly and in the right positions. The last competency that I want to talk about here is controlling the bout. And certainly here is Michael Fowler, again, a good friend, referee from Germany here at the Olympic Games in 2016. And you can see that he's given a good stern warning to blue. And I think as a referee, again, you have to be able to control the bout. And that's the handling of unsporting behaviors, handling of difficult situations. There's lots of ways that referees can control the bout by how they move, their positioning, what they say. And I think that when we're looking at separating the good from the best referees are excellent at controlling the matches. And I think that's, again, as we look over the last few competencies that I just discussed, probably the part we're really looking at is what separates the good from the best. And this is certainly one of those areas that the best referees do. Many times people think that it's just being able to evaluate points, like you have to score the points and you go on. But the reality is it's so much more than just scoring the points correctly. And I'll go through a quick story here in a little bit. But I want to show a great example here of controlling the bout. So this is from the 2013 European Championships, and Uwe, I believe, is on the webinar. So he's such a great friend of mine, and we've had been able to share many great experiences. And this is a great example. No matter what year, the best referees know how to control the bout. So let's take a look at this. This is the start of a match here in freestyle. So he's getting started with the match. And again, it doesn't matter what year, of wrestling it is. I certainly have examples that are from more recent matches, but this is just a great example and one that I show almost at every referee course that I do in terms of controlling the bout. There was, what a great job. He saw him right here. just before, he saw right there was one and then two, and immediately he stops, gives a quick warning, and I can tell you after this happened, as watching this match, being at that competition, after this happened, there was no more problems in that match. Like, he controlled the bout immediately right at the beginning. And again, just a great example of what the best referees do, in those difficult situations. As I mentioned before, I have a kind of a great story. I was doing an introduction to referee course at one of the national federations, and we had their women's national team there, who was actually a really good team, and they were watching the referees practice, and we were going through simulated matches. And a couple times they looked over and, hey, they said, "Hey, Zach," they they looked and said, "That was 4 points, right?" And I said, "Yeah, it was 4 points. The referee may have scored it too." And I said, "Yeah, you're right, it was 4 points." And I said, "Well, hey, why don't you give it a try?" Because a lot of times when we think of when refereeing is, the scoring the points, and sometimes just evaluating the holds, sitting back and being off the mat, it's very easy to score or look and have an idea or opinion of what that scoring situation is. But when I encouraged them, I said, "Hey, please go referee." They went out and did it. And it was really interesting because when they got out there, they realized that there was so many more things that were happening besides just standing back and scoring the points. And in order to be a great referee, you have to do all of those other things as well. And I think that's an important part. As you go through, you can constantly be practicing and working on those areas. I think that, whenever sometimes we go to competitions and you're like, okay, how is this going to help me? Certainly the big competitions are going to help you for almost every one of these, but sometimes maybe you go to a local competition. I know that sometimes when I will go referee at just a local event just in my area, I know that I'm probably not going to there's not going to be as much on, controlling the bouts, because we're looking at younger kids who are just going to go out and score points. But what I really focus on is the positioning, because I know they're going to score points. So I really have to work to try to make sure that I'm improving my position on every match. And that's the focal point of what I want to practice that day. And so every time you go to a competition, there's certain things that you can always be working on, no matter what level it is. So I would encourage you to always to continually keep practicing those competencies during that time. Now, the next thing I want to do, I want to kind of switch gears and look here at the referee team duties. So as we go through this, we're going to look at each of the positions on the referee team, whether that is, as a referee, as a judge, or as a match chairman. We'll kind of go through what are some of the main responsibilities that each of those positions have. Now, certainly I won't go through every possible example of things that they have to be able to do, but I want to try to hit the main points of responsibilities that they have within that team. Because I think that anytime we're looking at the referee team, everybody and every person on that particular team for that match has a responsibility. And you really have to know what each position's responsibility is, because on any given match, you could be in any of those three positions. So I think that's what we want to make sure we spend time, is identifying what each of those responsibilities are. So the first one here is the job of the referee. And certainly, I think most of what we just got done looking at and we're talking about really focused on the position of the referee, the referee who's in the center of the mat. And so that's often where most of our webinars will focus and be centered around, is that job of the referee. So we're just going to kind of highlight some of these, but know that most of what we do in the webinars going forward, those are going to be based, largely on that job, the job of the referee in the center of the mat. So some things that they have to be able to do. Number one, they have to be able to, they start and stop the matches. So they have the whistle. They control when the matches start, they control when the matches stop, and they have to be able to start and stop them at the right times. The next part is they're going to be often the first ones to score the situations. So they're conducting the match, they're scoring the match as it goes, and they're many times the first one to do so. They also have to work closely with the match chairman and the judge during the course of the bout, because sometimes they need confirmation They maybe are looking at a particular aspect, maybe it's passivity, and they need to be able to work closely with those individuals on the team. As mentioned earlier, they're going to be the ones who verbally communicate with the wrestlers. They're the ones that are going to be saying red action, blue open, but they're going to be that first communication with the wrestlers to help stimulate action or help to correct potentially maybe there's a problem or they have an attention and they have to correct something that within the match. The referee is going to be the one that communicates with those wrestlers. Probably a big one for me when it comes to job of the referee is really keeping the eyes on the wrestlers at all times. Like, there's ways to position yourself as a referee to still keep your eyes on the wrestlers and still see the things that you need to see, whether that's the clock, the judge, or the match chairman. But your eyes are always on the referees. Like when they go out of bounds, my eyes are on the wrestlers. And when the wrestlers are walking back to the center, my eyes are on the wrestlers. I will glance and be able to position myself to see other things that I need to, but mostly I need to make sure that I keep my vision on them. The referee also has to get confirmation for passivities, cautions, and falls. So they have to ask before they can stop the match for those situations. They also have to signal and announce the fall. So once they ask for confirmation for the fall, then they have to signal and indicate that the fall occurred and the match is over. And then lastly, one of the main things they have to do then is indicate the winner by raising the correct wrestler's hand at the end of the match. And again, many of these things we're going to be looking at the aspect of the referee, in terms of how do you become the best referee you can be. That's where our focus is going to be on the upcoming webinars. And again, here's a great friend of mine and a good referee, Sam Julian from the U.S. He, here getting ready to start the match between the two wrestlers. So great example here. The next one is the job of the judge. A lot of times the judge kind of goes unnoticed because they sit across on the other side away from the match chairman, and they simply, have limited responsibilities, but certainly important responsibilities within the referee team. First of all, they have to score the bout that's independent of the referee. Like, they have their opinion of the action that occurred, and they should score the action, the actions, or score the situation as they see it. This is how the referee team process works. And I think there's two things that I'm always concerned about with judges. Number one is that they will confirm everything that the referee calls. Like, it's never good to be the judge who confirms every single call. They just mirror every call. And it's also not great if it's the judge who always scores the opposite of what the referee scores. Like, they always give an option. I think it's important as a judge that you score what you see, and keep in mind that sometimes you may not always have the best angle for the action. So sometimes you have to, as a judge, have to evaluate who's in the best position for this. Here's the referee. Maybe the referee's not in great position and the action is going towards the match chairman. Well, maybe as a judge, I can't exactly see it, but maybe the referee scored 4 points and you're not sure if they went to danger, but the match chairman did. And that's a situation where maybe you couldn't exactly see it, but you could score 2 points, because then the match chairman can then make the best decision because they had the best view of the situation. So I think those are certain times where you have to think about what those options are. But most importantly, I would encourage you just to give your own opinion of the situation, because I'm a big believer that the process of having 3 referees on each match is that everybody works independent, like as they go, and then you work together as a team to get it correctly. And I know as a referee in the center, it's my favorite tournaments are when I know I have judges and match chairmen who are going to score, especially the judge who's going to score what they believe it is. They're not going to score it because I scored it that way. They're going to score their own opinion. And I think that's an important process here. Another important part for the judge here is being able to indicate their score by raising the correct paddle. You're either going to be using paddles or maybe an electronic timing system or scoring system. And with the paddles, it's important to make sure you raise those paddles up and high so that the match chairman can see that in the process. I also think, if you're using the electronic scoring system, you have to press the button, and it's important to hold the button down for a length of time, because when you press the button, it lights up. When you let go of it, it takes it off. And sometimes I know as a match chairman, I would look over there and they pressed it really quickly and I hadn't had time to check. So anytime you're using that electronic scoring system, it's important to make sure you hold that down a little longer so the match chairman's able to see what was scored. I like paddles better. I just think they're easier to see, and it changes a view in your eyesight. But it's important to hold those things up high and be confident in that scoring, in that process. It's also important as a judge to bring the attention of anything that happens that's irregular. Like maybe there's a leg foul. Maybe as a judge, you see the leg foul, but the rest of the referee team didn't. It's your job to help bring those irregularities to the attention of the referee team. So it's not just sitting there and waiting. If you see things, you have to indicate it, and you indicate it with your paddles, raising maybe the color of the paddle of the offended wrestler, the one who committed the foul, or raising the white paddle that there should be no points in this because there was something irregular that took place. So such an important part. And lastly, as a judge, you have to be able to fill out the bout sheet. And certainly, as you go through and fill that out, there's some documentation and notation that has to be done a certain way. One thing that I would encourage, though, as a judge is sometimes, not sitting so close to the table, sometimes sitting a little bit further back, because one thing that happens is, and I've seen this happen on more than one occasion, an action occurs and they score the points, and then they take their pen and then they look down to write down the score. Well, in the process of looking down, another action happens and they miss the score. So they don't know what happened. So two things that I would recommend. One, if you sit back a little bit further, when you look down, you have more vision with your eyesight. You're not so close that when you look down, your head completely blocks the wrestlers. So sitting back allows you to still see movement. Two, I would also encourage you as a judge to, when you see those situations, especially if there's a quick takedown, you score the quick 2 points, so you hold your 2. I usually don't write that on the bout sheet until the situation has got to where the referee stops the match and goes back and brings them back to the starting position. Or if there's just, you could tell they're not working, then I'll indicate the 2 points on the bout sheet. But sometimes I'll just remember what the score is, and then I'll go back and write down the score when there's a good time to do that, because I don't want to miss an action that occurs and an opportunity to give an opinion on a scoring situation. All right, the last position here of the referee team is the job of the match chairman. And here, the picture is not great, I know. For some of you, it's hard to find pictures of judges and match chairmen, because many times you see photos, it's with the wrestlers and they have the referees that are on the mat. So it's hard to find. This actually took this picture from a video. And you can tell that this is the match chairman. This is Stanislav Cernik from Slovenia. And he is, again, a great friend and instructor. And he's sitting next to the video, the UWW video person, and they are recording this. And that's how I know he's to the left. To our left is the scorekeeper, to the right is the video. And so here Stani is making a decision of whatever the situation occurred. He had to give an opinion in this. So many times as the match chairman, this is one of the most experienced referees of the referee team. Because being a match chairman is not just about scoring the points and knowing the points. You have to know those, but you also have to know how the procedure is supposed to go, and you have to know all the other little things that go into making that match correct. And so being the match chairman often is going to be one of the more senior members of the team, just because they've got a little bit more experience in that process, and if they have seen more situations and can be able to handle those a little bit better. But certainly I think as you're working maybe at a local event, anybody can be in any of these positions. So it's important to know what that job entails. First, they have to be able to coordinate the work of the referee and judge. So they're just making sure that the match goes well, and making sure that the referee and judge are getting their jobs and scoring the points, as they should. The match chairman should not be the first to give an opinion on a scoring situation. So if something happens, the match chairman should be the last to go. And their job is to score the action if the referee, if there's a disagreement between the referee and judge. So if the referee and judge don't agree, this is when the match chairman then can step in and has to essentially break the tie. So the referee scores 4 red, the judge scores 2 red. They have to make a decision between 4 red or 2 red, and then they indicate that very quickly. I think it's important as a match chairman, one thing too that I would encourage is when you watch the action, you should already have in your mind what that score is. And then if you get that score from either the referee or judge, great, now you know what it is. But sometimes with match chairman, if you're just waiting to see what they happen before you formulate that opinion in your head, then you're trying to then you start second guessing what that score should be. And many times that needs to be in your head directly as it goes. Now, maybe you saw an action and you thought it was 4 red, but it was close and they both scored 2 red. Okay, I know why they scored 2 red, so I'm okay with that. But if, for example, like maybe they scored 2, maybe they scored 2 red and it was supposed to be 4 blue. As a match chairman, if you see that, that's one of the other things. If you see a serious mistake that occurs, you have the opportunity to stop the match at the right time, stop the match, and have a consultation. And then during that consultation, that very quick meeting, you then can explain why the scoring action is what it is, and then make sure that we have the score correctly from the referee team, and then go back out and then indicate the correct score. So I think anytime you see a serious mistake, that's a good time to interrupt and have a consultation. But if it's not a serious mistake and it's just your opinion's a little different than their opinion, if they both agreed, then you're going to go with their opinion. And certainly as the coaches, they have the opportunity to challenge those situations if they disagree with that as well. But I think as a match chairman, it's such an important part that you already have a formulated, this is what it should be. Here's what the score should be. Here's what, if it's a caution, if it's negative wrestling, whatever it is, you should have that in your head first. Allow the referee and judge to do their jobs, and then step in and do your job if needed, or break the tie if it's needed. Another important part here is that the match chairman has to confirm all passivity, cautions, and falls. Sometimes, that was a change a few years ago where they didn't have to be the one to confirm it. Now they must confirm all of these. So as a match chairman, many times as I'm watching this match, if I see them ask for those things, I know immediately that I have to be able to give them a response. I can't wait and be like, well, what do they think? As a match chairman, you're in that position. You're kind of the mat leader for that match. You have to have the confidence to make that call very quickly. Also, the match chairman participates in the video challenge. If there's a challenge, the match chairman will work with the neutral referee or the referee delegate to come up with the best outcome for that challenge. They also do have to correctly fill out the bout sheet, just like the judge does, and the same tactics that I explained with the judge in terms of waiting to score until the situation is done. On the bout sheet, I think is still holds true for the match chairman. And then at the end of the match, it's important for the match chairman to declare the winner. So they have to declare either with the red paddle or the blue paddle who the winner of the match is, and the referee will wait until they declare the winner. Then they will raise the hand of that wrestler. So just following that procedure. So when I look at the positions of the referee, the judge, and the match chairman, certainly every one of those positions has its own responsibilities. And in order for it to work together well and the team to go well, everybody that's on that team for that particular match has to understand their responsibilities. I do know that if I'm the one making assignments for those things, typically I almost always start by putting the referee first. I typically assign the referee first, because I'm a big believer that job is so difficult, being out there and trying to navigate all parts of it, that I like to make sure that if we have a difficult match coming up, that we have a really strong referee that can handle it. Because if you have a great referee, really the judge and match chairman are just keeping score. So then after I assign the referee, the next place I go is to the match chairman, because we have to have somebody who knows the procedure, is experienced. And then the last position I typically assign is the judge. And you kind of work together to make sure that you have a great team in that process. So that is a little bit in terms of with the referee competencies and the referee team duties. And so now If anybody has any questions, I saw there was a few questions that came up during with this, and I see there's a couple of questions here. And if you have other questions, I would encourage you just go down to the Q&A button and just type your question in, and I will answer the questions as they come. So the first question here was, as a mat chairman, do we need to raise scoring bats even if the referee and judge agree on the points scored? The answer is no. You don't have to score, because they've confirmed it. The referee scored 2, the judge scored 2. It's 2 points. You can just move on. Certainly there's times and situations where, as a mat chairman, if it's like certainly in certain contexts of matches where, if I agree that it's 2 as well, like I have no trouble scoring that as a third person to just say, we all confirmed this call, just because sometimes that helps, take away the uncertainty and what that call was. And so occasionally there'll be times when I do that, but it's not something you have to do or should do. It just depends on the situation of the match. Second question here is, while warning a wrestler for being passive or negative wrestling, referees often point fingers towards the wrestler. What is the best action to do this? I think if you're talking to red and you're giving the warnings and you're verbalizing, if you're talking to red, you should use your left hand, because that's the red hand. And so when you point to that wrestler with that hand, again, the coaches may not be able to hear. The fans, the spectators may not be able to know what you're saying, but if they see that you're pointing to that wrestler, that's why you see a lot of the best referees do this, is because they're indicating that they're communicating to that wrestler. And by doing that allows everybody to know. So I think that's a great way to do that. Anytime you're talking to them, is to point and use the hand of the wrestler that you're talking to or you're giving that warning to. Next question, what kind of conversations do occur on a consultation? Does the mat chairman need to explain the referee and judge the way of his opinion? When you, as a mat chairman, if you call a consultation, a couple things have to happen. Number one, this needs to be quick, because anytime we have delays in the match, it really interrupts the flow of the match. And then it takes out certain aspects of the training for the wrestlers. I know we had a situation some years, a couple of years ago in Fargo where we were doing video reviews at a competition, and the reviews were just taking a long time. And when that happens, essentially that gives the wrestlers a break to recover. And so we want these breaks to not be long. So one thing is, this has to be a quick conversation here. Two, I think when you call them over as a mat chairman, you already know what their opinions are. So there's no need to ask them what they saw. You should tell them what your opinion is. Like, here's what the situation that I saw. I saw that blue made the attack, took red to danger, so it should be 4 blue. And after you have that quick conversation, you give them your opinion, make sure that they agree, you go back out, you score the points, and then you move on. But as having that consultation, you definitely want to be, the mat chairman will do most of the talking in this situation, because we already know what their opinions are and why they called it. Now you're giving them your opinion of what you saw from your angle and why this should be the call that's made. For confirming, next question, for confirming falls, just mat chairman must confirm or judge can do it? The judge can confirm the fall, but it's not valid until the mat chairman confirms it. So I know as a referee, I'm looking directly to the mat chairman immediately, because if I have to keep turning back and forth, that doesn't look good. So I'm going to go right to the person that I need confirmation for. And as a mat chairman, you have to be ready to make that either confirm or give the white paddle. It's their choice to make that confirmation. But the judge can certainly indicate that they confirm it as well. But if they do confirm or don't confirm it, it doesn't make the fall valid. So, question, Fernando, who speaks first in the consultation? Saying, as just mentioned previously, that's, the mat chairman is going to do almost all the speaking. I remember as I came up and coming over, is coming through the ranks as a referee. You know, if we had a consultation, we came over, you listened, and then you went back and you made the score. So that's typically that process and how it went there. I think when we look at how is passivity determined in the ballot, I think that's another question at another time. I think you have to, I know that the referee commission is going to be putting together some webinars on, passivities, identifying passivities and things like that. So I don't want to get into too much of that, in terms of how you determine whether a wrestler is being passive or not, and going through that, we'll have the online rules test, which will kind of go through like the procedure for that, like what the process is. But I'll kind of leave that to the referee commission to be able to kind of go through and explain, how you determine passivity in that process, and how that works between Greco and freestyle. Again, that's getting into some more complicated probably than what we want to get into just looking at the competencies and the referee team duties. But it's certainly a great question, and one that, I would forward on to the referee commission to answer with their webinars. Next question here. The mat chairman can cancel the fall after the referee accidentally gave the whistle, strike the mat. So after, can the mat chairman say the fall was not valid and continue the ballot? Yeah, if the mat chairman did not confirm the fall and the referee made a mistake by blowing the whistle and indicating it, it's until the mat chairman confirms it, it's not a fall. So in this case, the wrestlers would go back and you would restart them in the parterre position, with the wrestler who was in the danger position would be down and the other wrestler would be on top, and you would just have to restart the match in that position. When is the last time in a match a referee can give points for passivity? Could it be in the last seconds of a match? I think when you're looking at passivity, I mean, like there's a procedure to follow with that, as I mentioned. If it's on activity time's after 30 seconds. If there's not been scoring during that 30 seconds, then you're certainly going to give that point, and that could have come at any time, during the match. So could that happen in the last seconds of a match? Certainly it could. Certainly those things would not be recommended, from that standpoint. But again, that's another topic and more detail in that process. Injury time is 15 seconds, but sometimes referee not start match after injury time ends, which the wrestlers and coaches do. In terms of what the coaches, I think, one thing is making sure that you establish and have conversations with whoever the head referee is at your local event, for your injury time, because injury time is really, an unlimited amount of time, which is based on the doctor's determination. So the doctor evaluates it and then decides if they should be able to wrestle or not. So I'm not sure the question pertained to that, but certainly I would talk to whoever the head referee is at the competition that you're at, in terms of how the injuries and how the blood time is going to work, because injury is unlimited, but blood time is 4 minutes. I know we typically wait until the doctor is on the mat before the blood time starts. So, and then end it when they indicate it as well. Next question, is there any attention by the judge when the coach is standing in the ballot or on his chair? I think that from the judge, a lot of times certainly the judge may talk, but a lot of times this is the referee and the mat chairman look together because they see the coaches, maybe they're on the mat or they're standing or doing something they're not supposed to do. Typically the first place to go is the referee typically goes over there and indicates to the coach to sit down. If it's really bad, they might go directly with the yellow card at that point, to get there. Typically the judge, having a lot of conversations back and forth with the coaches while the match is going on is not a good situation, because there's a chance that they're going to miss an action that occurs. Once the action stops, typically that's going to be the mat chairman. The referee will be going to indicate to the coach that they need to sit down in that process. But I would not advocate for the judge to have conversations where they're turning their head to either coach while wrestling is taking place, because there's an opportunity to miss important situations. If the mat chairman is sure about a pin, but the referee missed it, can they stop and say it was a fall? No, there's no chance. If I see the fall, I'm going to try to, hopefully the referee will get in position to be able to see that. But I'm not going to start by calling a fall from the mat chairman's position. That is not the proper procedure to follow for that. So it needs to be indicated, by the referee. And typically there's less chances. I'll be honest, there's certainly a few chances, and I can tell you as a referee, I'm sure that I missed falls. Like I didn't get down in a position quick enough to be able to see it, and I just didn't get there. And that's just part of the way the sport works. If we wanted to take that part out, then we wouldn't have referees. They would just be out there wrestling, and then the computer would just determine everything that happened in that process. So, as a match chairman, if you see it, you just make sure you keep your eyes focused so that you can confirm it when they ask for it. And then if it's not there, then make sure you have the ability to white paddle. But in my opinion, there's no chance as a match chairman. I would start by saying, nope, stop, sorry, the match is pinned. He was pinned and the match is done. Because when you go back to review it, there's two things we can't review. We can't review falls, whether somebody was pinned or not pinned, and we can't watch a match and say, well, they were pinned, so that's the end of the match. That's not going to happen. We can only look for the scoring, and if a foul occurred that caused the fall, then we can go back and review that. So, what definitely confirms the match chairman. So Roman, great to have you on. The match chairman has to confirm passivities, cautions, and falls. So those are the three things that they have to confirm at every time as part of the member of the team. And I know as a referee, I typically will position myself to when I ask for passivity, or if I'm going to give a caution, or I'm going to ask for the fall, I typically look directly to the match chairman and don't even go to the judge, because I know that they have to confirm those three things. So I'll position myself to be able to see them better. But those are the three things that they have to confirm. All right, competitions are very long and tired and get tired. And it's certainly becoming tired as the competitions get long, and there are some long competitions. Definitely, do the top referees practice some techniques to disconnect when they rest and refocus again, and then called on the mat? I think every referee has a different process that they go through. I think it's important too that whenever they finally leave the venue for the day, that they're able just to disconnect and be able to visit with friends and just enjoy the experience. I think they have an important job, but I think that that comes, and I think they do their job by being relaxed and not so much stress in that process. And so certainly being able to get away at night. Sometimes they go out to dinner with friends, and many times I know from my example, these are friends that I only get to see 2 to 3 times a year. So it's a great opportunity to get to visit with them and so on. Now, during the course of the competition, I think that sometimes certain people kind of get up, they stand, they stretch a little bit, but I think every referee has something that they do differently. Sometimes people can just sit there and just get up and go right back out, and they're ready to go. So it's a little bit different, but I think it's important for you as a referee to figure out what that is that helps you kind of rejuvenate yourself and stay focused during the match. I think it's an important part, and certainly a great question and something to consider. I'll go through a few more questions here because I'm certainly getting a lot of great questions, but just for the respect of time, I'll wrap up with a few more questions and then kind of, finish by reviewing some of the main points, and then we'll kind of end the webinar. So the next question here is, in local competition, when the camera is not monitoring the actions, if the match chairman gives a pin or fall and the referee didn't see the match chairman, what will it be? So first off, again, the match chairman can't give the fall and the pin directly. If the referee asks for it, then they should, they're asking for confirmation, then the match chairman then can confirm it, and then they would know that. If the camera is not monitoring, let's say that somebody wants to review this action because they thought that maybe a foul occurred during that, then you can go back and if it's not working, then there's no video, then you just go with what was confirmed on the match. I think it's an important process with that. So what cases would the referee stop the match? I think certainly a great question. I think when you see injuries or potential for injuries, one thing you want to do is be able to stop those matches quickly and be in position to do so. I think if they go out of bounds, you have to stop the match. If there's no action taking place, like they're in parterre, red's on top, and red's really not trying, okay, then you stop the match and come up. You have to look for unsporting behavior. If you see an unsporting behavior, somebody, they provoke something, then you should stop and give that warning. So, there's certainly just those are some of the main places where a referee is going to stop the match. And really, sometimes if they kind of get into a situation where they have a hole, but they're not improving, and they've been there, and as a referee, you verbalize to them to continue the action. If they don't, you just stop, and then, stop them and restart the match. So you have that ability as well as a referee, because we don't want it to just sit there and with no movement going on. So sometimes you just have to stop the match and restart them in that process. But going out of bounds, falls, unsporting behavior, passivities, those are places where the referee is going to have to stop the match. Does a referee always need confirmation from the match chairman to give a yellow or red card? So the red cards needs to come from the match chairman, and yeah, that's got to be. But the yellow card, no. The referee can give a yellow card, which is just a warning to the wrestler and or the coach during that time. And a lot of times in this process, if it gets to a point where it's a red card, the match chairman is always involved in this process. Because if you're going to red card somebody, there's a report that has to be filed with that. So the match chairman is definitely going to be involved in that process, but just to give a yellow card does not require confirmation to do so. So another good question here, Roman again, in what situations may the match chairman not accept the challenge? I think, as a match chairman, a couple things that you have to look at. One is, there's only a couple of things that can't be challenged in this process. One is passivity. So if the referee team calls passivity and they want to challenge it, that's not challengeable. And then challenging whether a wrestler was pinned or not. If they want to challenge and say that maybe it was Greco-Roman and they thought there was an offensive leg foul, we can challenge that, but you can't challenge those two. So those are two things that would certainly indicate that. I also think, if a lot of times it says, talk about the time, how much time from when the situation occurred to when they requested the challenge. And as a match chairman, you also have to be mindful of when did that score go on the clock. When did the points go on the board? Because sometimes, you may have scored it, but maybe the scoreboard operator didn't put the points up until just a couple seconds ago. So the coaches didn't know what was scored. So then they challenge it a little later than normal. So I think you have to be mindful of when that happens. But I do know that if there's too much time, like maybe something happens, the action happens at 45 seconds to go in the match, then the match stops. So like the match stops at like 35 seconds. And then they start wrestling again. And then as they're wrestling again, now they challenge the situation that happened, 20 seconds earlier. And there was a break in the action. I think there are some key things that kind of go into whether you take a look at those, videos or not. But I know that if there's too much time, they had an opportunity to challenge, the score's been up on there, and there was a break in the action and they didn't challenge it during the break, then, that's a place where I would not accept the challenge because it's been too long. But you as well as I do, certain situations, have to be applied a little bit differently with that. So, but I know, in the rules, it says you have a 5-second time limit, and that 5 seconds, I would say is there, but it kind of depends on when the points went on the board and also what's happening within the match itself in that situation. And sometimes there's a discretion that has to be involved, but certainly if there's a break in the action, there was a long time between when the situation occurred and now they want to go back and review it, that's not something that's going to be challenged as well. And so those are just some examples, of where challenges should not be accepted. But the one thing that sometimes comes up is, like, it's clearly too red. Like there's no chance it's not too red, and blue challenges it. And you're like, why are they challenging it? It's not our job to say, no, you can't challenge that because it's definitely too red. If they want us to challenge to look at the video, I'll look at the video, no problem. We'll look at the video, we'll confirm the 2 red, and then it'll be 1 more red, and then they lost their opportunity to challenge. So I think that in that situation, sometimes we're like, no, we're not challenging this, when the reality is it's absolutely challengeable and you can challenge that. So don't take away a challenge from somebody who has an opportunity or has that chance to do that, because they really can challenge nearly any situation but the two that are listed. So, all right, I want to kind of wrap up here because we're kind of at the 1 hour mark. So just some of the main points that we have up here. I think that we talked about, the most important jobs, really the two that you identified earlier, which are being fair and unbiased and ensure the safety of wrestlers. If as a referee, if you take care of those two things first, all the other things can really, you can improve in. You have ways to improve in all those. Referees obviously have many responsibilities during matches, and as we progressively go through more of these webinars, really this introduction to refereeing and getting started, we're going to be looking at what separates the good referees from the best referees, because your ability to do all those other responsibilities is what really separates the good from the best. And really, from looking at, how many people were on the webinar and who was on the webinar to start with, there's a lot of great referees here from all around the world. So it's great having all of you on here, because I know that you guys know how to do, are doing this well. Another part, for a match to go well, every member of the team has to do their job. So as a referee, as a judge, as a match chairman, everybody has a responsibility. And if everybody does their responsibility, there's a good chance the matches are going to go well. Not every situation may be scored right, but the goal is to get the correct winner at the end of it. And I think if you work well as a team, that's very possible. It's also important to continue to learn and work to improve these. As a referee, I think at the time where you get to the point where you're not working on the mat and you're not doing that, I think that's, you really start to lose those skills and what that situation is like. And as a referee, it's so important to continue to work and develop. Like, I don't know that as a referee, my goal is every time I go out there is to get better at what I'm doing, and the way to do that is to practice. And I know certainly during these times, we haven't had a lot of opportunities to get out and practice, and hopefully in the future, we'll get back to wrestling events and you'll get a chance to go do that. But in the meantime, attend as many webinars as you can, watch as many matches as you can, learn as much as you can from the sport. And I know as a referee, one thing that's been helpful for me is just the fact of coaching as well, and my background in coaching, and having the opportunity to speak with other coaches just to learn some of the techniques that they are teaching in that process. And by doing that, it helps me be able to learn and be able to identify those things a little bit quicker. So I continue to learn and work in each of these things as you go. And the last thing I'll leave you with, and this is something I learned a long time ago, one of the best ways to learn is to watch the best referees work. I had a number of individuals that were up here. I would encourage each of you, if you had a chance to see, if you see them on the mat, watch the match. And I can list another dozen referees that are just outstanding, that are great referees. And if you watch them, there's a reason why they're really good. One thing that I always noticed when I started up, when I was getting started, 10, 15 years ago in this process, was the fact that I would look and, who was getting the tough matches, and whoever the referee was out there was a reason why they were getting it. And it wasn't because that they could score the points right. There's a lot of people that can score the points right. What they were out there for is because they could do all the other things really well. And so at those big events, when you're not getting to work as much and you're doing a lot of watching, watch the best referees and learn from them. There's so many great techniques and tricks and positions and things that they do that we can all learn from. And I know that I've learned from, everyone that's been on here, and, and some of my good friends, I have a chance to watch them, and it's such a great opportunity for me to continue to learn that process. So I enjoy watching them as they go through those matches and those difficult situations. So, and how they handled it, and how can I handle those situations better too. So I would just like to, again, thank everybody for being here today. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the questions. I look forward to hopefully everybody here in a couple of weeks. I know in 2 weeks from today, we'll be looking at referee mechanics. So that's really, we're just going to be looking at those processes, and I'll have some different, potentially some videos to go with that, for what referees are doing and how to become the best referee you can be. If you do want to, we also have coaching webinars that are also going on during this time from the development department. There's one tomorrow on the role of coaches in youth sports. So I would encourage you to, if you're a member, if you're in coaching a club or part of that, to join us tomorrow at the same time. I'll be back here going through that as well. So thanks again, and I look forward and hope to see everybody in the future. Thanks.